It was February 20th when prosecutors say Teone Jones' mother found her stabbed inside of her South Side home, clinging to life until she later died at the hospital. Murder and kidnapping. Police say he killed Jones and stabbed her 12-year-old and 8-year-old sons before kidnapping the two boys. He later released them. Doorbell video shows the oldest brother knocking on doors, pleading for help that night, while at another location, his younger brother is seen on video wandering around a gas station before he was found by police.
Teone Jones was a mother of four, a woman with a future, living her life in Chicago. But that life was stolen in an act of brutal violence. Her story isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a chilling example of a domestic violence crisis plaguing Cook County, where a home can become the most dangerous place of all. In the final weeks of her life, Teone Jones actively sought a new beginning for herself and her four children. She made the courageous decision to end her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Marcus Bousley, aiming to move forward and establish a life free from conflict. This deliberate choice represented her hope for a more peaceful and stable future. Marcus Bousley, however, actively rejected Teone's decision and refused to let her go. Instead of respecting her wishes, he chose a path of intimidation and control. His actions following the breakup demonstrated a dangerous possessiveness that would steadily escalate into a terrifying campaign of harassment against the woman who no longer wanted him. Following the separation, Bousley began to actively stalk Teone. He deliberately intruded upon her life, tracking her movements and creating a constant, menacing presence. This obsessive pursuit dismantled her sense of security and forced her to live in a state of high alert, never knowing when or where he might appear next. Through his relentless stalking, Bousley cultivated an atmosphere of profound fear. He actively worked to ensure Teone felt watched, isolated, and unsafe in her own community on Chicago's South Side. Every day, Teone confronted the psychological torment of his obsessive behavior, which was designed to dominate her life even after their relationship had formally ended. While he waged this campaign of terror against Teone, Marcus Bousley actively exploited a significant lapse in the justice system. He walked the streets as a free man, despite being previously identified as a potential danger to the community. This freedom was not an oversight. It was a direct result of a judicial decision. The Cook County court system had previously charged Bousley with a serious, unrelated felony gun charge. This prior case identified him as an individual willing to illegally possess a dangerous weapon. The charge itself should have served as a critical warning sign about his capacity for future violence. Despite the gravity of the pending weapons charge, a judge actively granted Marcus Bousley his release on bond. This judicial action allowed a man facing a felony gun case to return to the community with minimal restrictions, a decision that would have catastrophic and irreversible consequences for Teone Jones. Bousley immediately took advantage of the liberty the court system afforded him. Instead of awaiting his trial quietly, he actively used his freedom to pursue, harass, and terrorize his ex-girlfriend. He twisted the court's leniency into an opportunity to escalate his obsessive and threatening behavior. The system's failure to detain him directly enabled his menacing actions. The decision to grant him bond placed Teone in an unconscionable position of vulnerability. The very man she feared most actively roamed free, empowered by a legal system that misjudged the danger he posed. Ultimately, this dangerous end to their relationship was defined by two parallel actions. Teone Jones actively fought for her independence, while Marcus Bousley actively leveraged a flawed judicial decision to strip it away. This combination of his obsessive pursuit and the system's failure created the perilous conditions that led directly to the final, tragic confrontation. In the early morning hours, Marcus Bousley put his violent intentions into action. He traveled to Teone Jones's South Side residence, deliberately seeking a final and brutal confrontation. His journey to her home was not a spontaneous act, but the culmination of his obsessive stalking and a premeditated plan to attack her. Upon his arrival, Bousley bypassed any semblance of a normal entry. He actively assaulted the home itself, using his body as a battering ram against the front door. With immense force, he kicked the door completely off its hinges, creating a violent and undeniable breach of Teone's sanctuary. Once inside, Bousley stormed through the now exposed entrance. He moved with aggressive purpose through the home, his single-minded goal to locate Teone. Every step he took inside the violated residence brought him closer to executing the final stage of his deadly plan. Bousley quickly found Teone in her bedroom, the one place she should have felt safest. He actively cornered her in this private space, robbing her of any chance to flee or defend herself. The confrontation he sought was now upon her, inescapable and terrifying. In that bedroom, Marcus Bousley revealed the illegal firearm he carried. He brandished the weapon, turning his campaign of harassment into a direct, lethal threat. This action demonstrated his clear premeditation and his decision to end the confrontation with deadly force. Without hesitation, Bousley aimed the gun at Teone and made the irreversible choice to fire. He actively pulled the trigger multiple times, discharging a hail of bullets at close range. He deliberately shot her repeatedly, ensuring the attack would be fatal. The bullet struck Teone's body, inflicting catastrophic and devastating injuries. The brutal assault left her mortally wounded on her own bedroom floor. The violence was swift, merciless, and designed to leave no chance for survival. First responders received the emergency call and raced to the scene. Paramedics found Teone clinging to life and immediately began performing life-saving medical procedures. They actively worked to stabilize her in the chaotic aftermath of the shooting. The emergency medical team placed Teone in an ambulance and sped towards the University of Chicago Medical Center. They transported her to the advanced trauma unit, fighting against time in a desperate attempt to save her life. Despite the heroic efforts of the paramedics and the hospital's trauma surgeons, Teone's injuries were too severe. The medical team exhausted every available option, but they could not overcome the damage inflicted by the multiple gunshots. Shortly after her arrival, doctors at the hospital officially pronounced Teone Jones dead, and authorities launched a homicide investigation into her murder. Following the murder of Teone Jones, Chicago police detectives immediately launched an intensive homicide investigation. They actively processed the crime scene, collected evidence, and interviewed witnesses to build a case. Their diligent work quickly pointed them to a single suspect, and they secured a warrant for the arrest of Marcus Bousley. Law enforcement officers then tracked down and apprehended Marcus Bousley. They took him into custody, officially holding him responsible for the death of his ex-girlfriend. This swift arrest brought an end to his flight from justice and marked the beginning of the legal proceedings against him. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office reviewed the evidence gathered by the police. Prosecutors actively assessed the case and determined they had sufficient proof to move forward. Subsequently, they formally charged Marcus Bousley with first-degree murder, the most serious charge for taking a human life. Bousley made his initial appearance in court, where prosecutors actively presented the facts of the case to a judge. They detailed the chilling narrative of the crime, beginning with the history of stalking and culmination, fatal attack in Teone Jones's home.
Pat, right now we're outside of Comer Children's Hospital, where those two boys, who are 8 and 11-year-old brothers, are receiving care after they were both allegedly stabbed by that person of interest who, as you mentioned, is now in custody. Now, taking things back to just before 7 o'clock last night, that's when police responded to the 7100 block of South Eberhart, where the boy's mom, 33-year-old Teone Jones, was found stabbed to death. Around that same time, CPD requested an Amber Alert at the same location for Jones's 8-year-old son. According to police, an 11-year-old boy, who family members say is also Teone's son, was found stabbed multiple times at an apartment building at 66th and Yale. The Amber Alert for the 8-year-old was canceled early this morning after he was found at a gas station at 79th and Damon. Family members say the brothers were taken by their mom's boyfriend and that both boys are receiving care at Comer Children's Hospital.
Darius is stable, but he has to go through another surgery. They had to cut off part of his pancreas, but he's going through another surgery today, but he's stable for the moment.
Yeah, we thought maybe 2-3 stab wounds. Then we thought 6. Now they're saying 12, so we don't know what's going on with Tristan until Tristan comes out of surgery.
Definitely a tragic set of events. Family members say that they have described Teone as someone who was an angel with a really big smile and just really cared for her children and was very supportive of all of her family members. They also say that she was a very talented hairdresser who, of course, will be deeply missed. For now, reporting live outside of Comer Children's Hospital, I'm Jewel Hillary, WGN News.
During the hearing, the prosecution team vividly described how Bousley kicked the door off its hinges and shot Teone multiple times. They painted a clear picture of a premeditated and brutal act of domestic violence, arguing that his deliberate actions left no doubt as to his intent. This case prompted the state's attorney's office to actively address a larger, more disturbing pattern. They seized the opportunity to inform the public about a significant and troubling increase in domestic violence-related murders occurring throughout Cook County, using Teone's story as a tragic example of a wider crisis. Prosecutors released alarming statistics that quantified this deadly trend. They actively showed how the number of domestic violence homicides had risen sharply compared to previous years. This data provided stark, numerical proof of an escalating problem that demanded public attention and official action. The state's attorney's office also highlighted the specific role that firearms play in this epidemic. They actively connected the rise in murders to gun violence, noting that a high percentage of these domestic killings are carried out with guns. This connection underscored the lethal combination of domestic disputes and easy access to firearms. In response to the horrific crime and the troubling data, community advocates and officials began to actively call for change. They used the momentum from Teone's case to demand stronger protections for victims and more effective interventions for offenders, particularly those with a history of gun charges. Ultimately, the justice system, through the actions of the police and prosecutors, set a course to hold Marcus Bousley accountable. At the same time, Teone Jones's tragic death actively became a catalyst, forcing a necessary public conversation about the systemic failures that allowed domestic violence to escalate into murder and the urgent need to address this deadly trend in the community. Marcus Bousley's violent actions on that fateful morning actively orphaned 4 children. He deliberately made the choice to fire his weapon, and in doing so, he consciously stripped a mother from her sons and daughters. His crime did not just end a life. It irrevocably altered the course of 4 young lives, leaving them to navigate a world without the guidance and love of the woman who raised them. The murder of Teone Jones actively shattered a family. Bousley's rampage tore through the heart of a home, leaving parents, siblings, and other relatives to grapple with an unbearable loss. They now confront a future defined by her absence and haunted by the brutal manner in which she was taken from them. His actions forced upon them a lifelong sentence of grief. Bousley's selfish rage actively stole Teone's future. He denied her the chance to watch her children grow up, celebrate their milestones, and achieve her own personal dreams. He extinguished the potential of a 36-year-old woman, reducing her entire existence to a tragic headline and a painful memory for those who loved her. In the wake of this tragedy, Teone Jones's story actively becomes a powerful symbol of a wider crisis. Her death now represents the lethal endpoint of domestic violence in Cook County. Community leaders and advocates now hold up her case as a stark illustration of how stalking and control can escalate into murder when systems fail to intervene effectively. Her murder actively exposes a critical failure within the criminal justice system. The fact that Marcus Bousley was free on bond for a felony gun charge at the time of the attack forces a difficult public conversation. Her case now serves as Exhibit A in the argument that judicial decisions on bail for violent offenders must more accurately assess the immediate danger they pose to others, especially their former partners. Furthermore, this event actively highlights the deadly role firearms play in domestic disputes. Bousley used a gun as the ultimate tool of control, transforming his campaign of harassment into an irreversible act of violence. The case makes an undeniable argument that keeping guns out of the hands of known domestic abusers and those with pending felony weapon charges is a critical life-saving measure. In response to this preventable tragedy, advocates and lawmakers now actively demand reform. They use the specific, painful details of Teone's murder to push for stricter bond conditions for violent offenders. Her story fuels their fight for policies that prioritize victim safety over an offender's freedom. Teone's death actively ignites a fierce call for accountability that extends beyond her killer. The community now questions the judges, prosecutors, and systems that are designed to protect victims. Her case forces a re-examination of practices and policies that allowed a dangerous individual to slip through the cracks with such fatal consequences. Her grieving family, though devastated, actively channels their pain into a powerful fight for others. They ensure her memory is not just one of sorrow, but one of purpose. By speaking out, they transform their personal tragedy into a public rallying cry, demanding that Teone's death be the last of its kind. The narrative of her murder actively inspires a renewed commitment from officials to confront the domestic violence epidemic. Her story forces law enforcement and the state's attorney's office to publicly acknowledge the rising tide of domestic homicides and to pledge more resources and focus toward preventing them. Beyond the grim statistics, those who knew Teone now actively work to preserve the memory of the woman she was. They share stories of her laughter, her kindness, and her devotion as a mother. They fight to ensure she is remembered not for how she died, but for the vibrant life she lived. The legal system actively pursues justice through its first-degree murder case against Marcus Bousley. His trial and eventual sentencing represent the formal, societal process for holding him accountable for his actions. This legal battle serves as one crucial part of the response to the crime he committed. Simultaneously, a broader fight for others actively wages on in Teone's name. Advocacy groups now cite her case when they lobby for new legislation and greater funding for victim support services. Her story gives them a powerful, human example of why their work is a matter of life and death. Ultimately, the tragedy of Teone Jones actively serves as a stark warning to the entire community. It demonstrates the critical importance of taking the red flags of stalking, control, and domestic abuse seriously. Her death proves that these behaviors are not private matters, but urgent public safety issues. Therefore, the final legacy of Teone Jones, forged in the aftermath of her murder, actively challenges everyone. It compels society to create and enforce stronger protections for the vulnerable, to listen to victims, and to reform the systems that fail them. Her memory now fuels a fight to ensure that no more families are forced to endure such a profound and preventable loss. When asked about his nephews, Wilson's composure momentarily faltered. "He's still in critical condition," he said of 8-year-old Tristan, who had undergone 4 surgeries to repair damage to his liver and intestines. The other one still has injuries, like stitches in his hand and stuff, but they're both strong. The family requested privacy for 4-year-old Maddox, who had begun therapy to address his trauma.
Loved ones gathered today in Chicago to remember Teone Jones, who was killed in a stabbing attack. Her 8 and 11-year-old sons were also hurt and remain in the hospital.
And tonight, the man suspected of killing her and kidnapping the children is in custody in Northwest Indiana. Marcus Bousley was arrested and is facing felony resisting law enforcement charges in Indiana. He is awaiting extradition to Illinois, where charges are pending.
Family and community members are still trying to wrap their heads around the tragedy that unfolded Thursday night. Police say Teone Jones was stabbed inside a home near 72nd Street and South Eberhart and died at the hospital. An Amber Alert then went out for her 8-year-old son, who was later found. Investigators say the 8-year-old boy and his 11-year-old sibling were both stabbed multiple times.
Doctor said that they most likely going to make it out of it. I've talked to Darius, but he has something in his mouth where he can't speak. But Tristan, he's been talking nonstop since surgery.
Sunday, community leaders held a prayer vigil for the family.
We need to make sure those kids are provided for, they have the necessary counseling they need. Because, I mean, I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine what they're going through.
Among the people in attendance, Cynthia Keel, the Good Samaritan, who says the 11-year-old boy came knocking at her home near 66th and Yale in desperate need of help.
And I just feel like the light of God and the light of safety shines through our home, where people know this is a place where we can come and get the support, the assistance that we need. So I'm grateful to be that.
The suspect, Marcus Bousley, was arrested in Northwest Indiana. Family members say Bousley was dating Jones and is the father of one of her children.
Maybe it could have been prevented if somebody would have said something that they saw on the internet, saw when they was getting out the car.
Community members also passed out flyers with resources for anyone experiencing domestic violence. It's unclear when Bousley will be extradited to Illinois.
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC7 Chicago Eyewitness News.
Teone's tragedy highlights warning signs that often precede deadly violence. Isolation is typically the first strategy of abusers. Bousley systematically cut Teone off from friends and family, monitoring her communications and restricting her movements. Financial control followed, with Bousley demanding oversight of her earnings, while contributing minimally to household expenses. The progression to physical violence is rarely sudden. It builds through emotional abuse, threats, and intimidation before escalating to bodily harm. Experts point to specific high-risk periods when violence often intensifies, when victims attempt to leave relationships, during pregnancy, or when abusers perceive a loss of control. For Teone, Bousley's discovery of her lunch with a friend represented such a trigger. Research shows that domestic violence homicides are often preceded by threats involving weapons, exactly as Bousley had threatened Teone with a gun months before her death. Understanding these patterns is crucial, as recognition creates opportunities for intervention before violence turns deadly. If you recognize these warning signs in your own relationship or someone else's, immediate resources are available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233 provides 24-hour confidential support, safety planning, and local referrals. Text START to 88788 if speaking aloud isn't safe. Most communities have emergency shelters that provide immediate housing, legal advocacy, and counseling services without requiring police involvement first. For those supporting loved ones in dangerous relationships, experts recommend avoiding judgment or ultimatums. Instead, maintain connection, express concern for their safety, and help develop safety plans. Document incidents when possible, as this evidence becomes crucial if legal protection becomes necessary. Financial assistance programs exist specifically for survivors leaving abusive situations, covering relocation costs, emergency housing, and childcare expenses. For Teone, intervention might have looked like a workplace trained to recognize abuse signs, neighbors who reported disturbances, or a healthcare system screening for domestic violence during routine visits. Each point represents an opportunity where different actions might have changed her fate. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to lled True Crime Stories. Your engagement helps these crucial messages reach more people who might need them. Share this video with someone who should hear this information. You never know whose life you might save. Remember Teone Jones not just as a victim, but as a mother, daughter, and woman with dreams that deserve fulfillment. Her story ends in tragedy, but by learning from it, we honor her memory. The greatest tribute we can offer Teone is ensuring other stories don't end the same way. Knowledge is protection. Awareness saves lives.
The family of Teone Jones say they are taking it one day at a time as they continue to grieve their loved one. The 8 and 11-year-old boys are still at the hospital, recovering from their injuries.
Doctor said that they most likely gonna make it out of it. I've talked to Darius, but he has something in his mouth where he can't speak. But Tristan, he's been talking nonstop since surgery.
Family and community members are still trying to wrap their heads around the tragedy that unfolded Thursday night. Police say Teone Jones was stabbed inside a home near 72nd Street in South Eberhard. She died at the hospital. An Amber Alert then went out for her 8-year-old son, who was later found. Investigators say the 8-year-old boy and his 11-year-old brother were both stabbed multiple times. Sunday, community leaders held a prayer vigil for the family.
We need to make sure those kids are provided for, they have the necessary counseling they need, because, I mean, I can't imagine. I don't want to imagine what they're going through.
Among the people in attendance, Cynthia Keel, the Good Samaritan who says the 11-year-old boy came knocking at her home near 66th and Yale in desperate need of help.
And I just feel like the light of God and the light of safety shines through our home, where people know this is a place where we can come and get the support, the assistance that we need. So I'm grateful to be that.
Maybe it could have been prevented if somebody would have said something that they saw on the internet, saw when they was getting out the car.
Community members also passed out flyers with resources for anyone experiencing domestic violence. They are also encouraging neighbors to speak out if they witness anything.
The victim's brother speaking after that courtroom appearance, saying while the family wants justice in this case, coming here today opened up old wounds.
It's the anticipation got me. It was like waiting for the roller coaster ride to hit, and then I'm like, okay, now I can see don't know. It's like a play-by-play of everything that happened again. But I guess I'm stronger through it.
It was February 20th when prosecutors say Teone Jones' mother found her stabbed inside of her South Side home, clinging to life until she later died at the hospital. Late last night, her boyfriend and father of her youngest of 3 children, Marcus Bosley, was extradited back here to Cook County from Indiana to face multiple charges, including murder, attempted murder, and kidnapping. Police say he killed Jones and stabbed her 12-year-old and 8-year-old sons before kidnapping the 2 boys. He later released them. Doorbell video shows the oldest brother knocking on doors, pleading for help that night, while at another location, his younger brother is seen on video wandering around a gas station before he was found by police. Jones's brother giving an update on the boy's conditions.
He's still in critical condition. The other one still has injuries like stitching on his hand and stuff, but they're both strong.
Now, the next day after the stabbings, Bosley was arrested in Lake County, Indiana, after a police pursuit on I-65. Today in court, a judge deciding to keep him held.